Okay, so welcome to one data set and 3 use cases with Microsoft Fabric. So when I started this, when I was writing the abstract for this session, I felt like, oh, this is a really cool title. It is explaining exactly what I'm going to do in this session. But the more and more I look at the title, it's just like it doesn't explain actually what I'm going to do in this session. But we are going to talk about Microsoft Fabric. So first thing first, a bit about me. I am Prati Kamasani. If you could say Pratyusha, you could call me Pratyusha. I work as a solution architect at Avanade, UK and Ireland. I'm also one of the Microsoft MVP, and I organize the London Microsoft Fabric user group along with James Dales. So if you're interested in Power BI, if you're interested in Fabric, we have a user group here tonight. It's an AMA panel. There will be Microsoft CAT team, there are MVPs, there's Adam and Patrick, there is Marco will be there. So there's so many people going to be there. If you have any questions related to Fabric and things, that's probably the best place to be. And those are my contact details and the things like that. So I'm somebody who has started my career as an MSBI developer, and then eventually moved into Power BI. So in the past few years, I've been doing nothing but Power BI. I used open data sets to create a portfolio, and by using Power BI, I created so many reports just by using Power BI. And I used only Power BI desktop to create pretty much my entire portfolio by using open data set. But however, there are things which were easy. There are things which was not straightforward, especially creating those complex Power Query functions or creating those kind of transformations, bringing the data from APIs and all those things. They were not straightforward with Power BI. So that's when, Microsoft Fabric comes into the place. Though all those not so straightforward situations can be resolved by Microsoft Fabric. So that is what inspired this session. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use Open Dataset. It's a demo-focused session. I'm going to use Open Dataset, and I'm going to look at it like 3 scenarios or 3 use cases. And we try to use most of the experiences that are available in the Microsoft Fabric. I'm not going to touch the data science or data activator, but we are going to look at it more as a Power BI point of view. How many of you comes from Power BI background? Most of them. Okay, so you will see what you could do with Microsoft Fabric when you're coming from the Power BI. So from the data set point of view, we will be using World Bank data. It's a great data set, and especially if you're working towards creating some portfolios, or if you're learning new languages, Microsoft Fabric kind of things, exploring new tools. So what you have there are indicators data. You could go and get that data to start working with Microsoft Fabric in this case. And the good thing about it is because it's open data, it is very similar to the real data set that we work with clients and things, instead of working with AdventureWorks or something like that. I would totally recommend this data set if anyone is trying to explore it. And from the data point of view, these are the various indicators that I will be working with today. So this data set is not something new for me. I've been using this data set with Power BI Desktop for a very long time. But when I was working with Power BI Desktop, what I was doing is I was obviously using Power Query to get the data. I was using the data modeling. I was using Power BI Desktop, creating the relationships, creating the measures, calculated columns, and then creating the report pages on top of it. I either created live connection, published my Power BI PBIX file to Power BI service, and created a live connection, created various reports, and shared with so many other people. That's pretty much what I was doing with Power BI Desktop, and we are all familiar. But when we are coming to the world of Microsoft Fabric, in the beginning it may look like, oh my God, there are so many experiences, there are so many new items. But when we start looking at it, just like what we have been doing in the Power BI. So irrespective of what tools we are using, is it Microsoft platform, are you doing Databricks, or are you working with only Power BI Desktop, most of the times what we're doing is we're doing data integration, data modeling, and the data visualization. It doesn't matter, you could be calling different things, you could be saying data ingestion, data preparation, data analytics, but at the end, these are the basic things that we've been doing and we could do with the Power BI, with Microsoft Fabric as well. So let's see the first thing, which is the data integration. So when it comes to data integration in Microsoft Fabric, like many Microsoft tools, there is not one way to do things. There are several ways to do things. So in the Microsoft Fabric as well, when we are talking about data integration, we could use Dataflow Gen 2, we could use data pipeline and the notebook. I know the screenshot says preview because when I first did this session, the Fabric was in preview. I haven't bothered to change my slides, but they are not in preview anymore. So we have Dataflow Gen 2, data pipeline, and the notebook. So one other thing that's also available here is the warehouse. For this session, we will not be using the warehouse because warehouse is very much looking at, like, if you're coming from SQL Server or Azure SQL or very structured tables, store procedures, and those kind of things, that's when warehouse is great for ingestion. In this case, I won't be using any of those things, so that's why I won't be using the warehouse. But these are the three integration methods that we will be using. So, and the next thing which is important to think about is the storage. For when you're ingesting data into whatever the tool, in this case Microsoft Fabric, where are you going to store that data? When it comes to the storage, everything is in one lake in Microsoft Fabric. But however, which method you are going to store your data? So we have data warehouse and we have lake house. Those are two ways that you could store. As I mentioned, when we are talking about the warehouse, it is a very structured. And when it comes to the lake house, it could handle unstructured, semi-structured, pseudo-structured data. So in this case, we will be using lake house, but it is important to understand when you would use what. So like a type of the data is most important thing. And the second thing which is important is the developer skill set. Are you coming from SQL background? Are you coming from Spark background? Are you familiar with the lakehouse architectures? Are you more looking into the existing data warehouse, very structured store procedures, tables, views, and things like that? And also authoring capabilities. Do you like writing SQL? Do you like writing store procedures and things like that? Or do you don't mind working with Spark and PySpark and things like that? And also, there are some other things which are important to consider as well. For example, data access control. And like a dynamic data masking. Are you interested in RLS, OLS, those kind of things? And how do you want your direct lake functionality? So anyone was there in the Phil's direct lake session yesterday? Yeah, so like Phil talked about how direct lake doesn't work with the views in the warehouse. But if your end goal is to use direct lake, then you probably won't use data warehouse views. Then you would obviously go for lakehouse. So those are the various things that needs to be considered. There is a really nice article, and there is this kind of a decision matrix on the Microsoft Docs. It compares about data warehouse, lakehouse, and including Power BI Data Mart. I would totally recommend to go and check it out if you're thinking about it. So that is about the storage. As I mentioned, we won't be using the warehouse. We will be focusing only on the lakehouse this case. So the very first use case, what I'm going to do is ingesting data by using Dataflow Gen 2. So that's going to be our first demo that I will be working with. So let's go back to my Fabric. So how many of you played with Fabric? Or let me ask, how many have you not played with Fabric? A few of them. OK. So going to Microsoft Fabric is just like Power BI. You go to powerbi.com. And once you go to powerbi.com, if you have the Fabric trial available or enabled, or if you already have Power BI Premium, you could go and enable Fabric actually, because it's kind of, you have Power BI Premium, you already have Fabric. Once you go to the powerbi.com, this is where you have various experiences. And you could go and you could choose between various experiences. We are interested in Power BI, so we will be in the Power BI experience only. And in this case, I have a workspace that's already created. It's called 3 Use Cases Demo. And I could go to New, and here, because I'm in the Power BI experience, I could only see Power BI-oriented items. But I could go and click on More Options. That's where I could go and see all the available items in the Microsoft Fabric. So in this case, what I wanted to do is I want to ingest data into Dataflow Gen 2. So let me go and click on that. So I'm basically creating the Dataflow Gen 2. Dataflow Gen 2 is very similar to Dataflow Gen 1, except in the Dataflow Gen 2, we have a destination. So in the data flow Gen 1, we're basically loading data into our to our Power BI data sets or semantic models. But with the data flow Gen 2, you could save your data into various places. So in this case, what I wanted to do is I want to go and get data into my Gen 2. I have a code which is already created. So I will be using the, let me go and create get data, click blank query. I'm just going to go and paste it and click next. So because I'm kind of cheating here with coming with the prepared code, but what it's basically doing is it's going to the source, so this which is my API, which is like a World Bank data API, and in this case I'm just interested in one indicator instead of, as you saw, like there are so many indicators, but in this case I'm just getting one indicator's data. I'm doing the data transformation, cleaning and bits and bobs and things like that. So which we have been doing in Microsoft with the Power BI data flow Gen 1 already. The interesting thing here is, if you could see here, what I have here is I have a data destination. So I could click on the data destination, and there are various options that I could choose. And in this case, I will be choosing the lake house, and I could go and I could start keeping data into the lake house. So you do have to have lake house beforehand when you wanted to choose here, otherwise it won't appear here. So if you're starting from scratch, I would suggest to go and create the lakehouse first and then start doing these things. In this case, these are the various lakehouses I have already available. So I could go and choose a lakehouse, which is a 3 use cases demo. If I click on this, I could also go and see what other things available. This is my workspace, and these are the various lakehouses that I have available in here. So this is a lakehouse that I created, and in here, I could go and add my table. So I could create a new table. This is what's happening here, as you could see on the top, or I could go and add it to the existing table. So when I choose the existing table, in this case, I could go and choose one of those existing table, or let me go and actually create a new table. Let's say test. And I'm going to, could have been a disaster, but okay. I'm clicking next, and this is something I quite like. So if you, a few months ago, this was not this clean, to be honest, but now it is getting better, and it is going to get better and better for sure. So what it is doing is it is using automatic settings, it is doing automatic mapping for me. But I could also do non-automatic, then I could choose how I want my data. Do I want to append my data? Do I want to replace my data? Do I want to use existing dynamic schema, or do I want a fixed schema? So there are so many things I could do it, and the rest of the things are pretty straightforward. Once I publish it, it gets published into my workspace, and then data gets loaded into my lakehouse. So in this case, what I have is I actually have a lakehouse data already created. So let me open that one, and I'm going to close this. So I'm going to go to lakehouse, and in this case, what I have is I have a data flow DF lakehouse. So yes. So the question is, in the data flows, are we aiming at one table or multiple tables? So traditionally, we could always do one table to one table. Can you do multiple tables? No, you cannot do multiple tables. But however, if it is if you want to append data from various data sources to one table, then you could create multiple queries and use that one table as a destination. Which could happen. So you will see more things later in the demo, which probably helps you this multiple table scenario. So what happened here is now we have a lakehouse. So in the Microsoft Fabric, whenever you create a lakehouse, it creates the lakehouse, and on top of lakehouse, you have 2 endpoints. One is it creates a default semantic model, and it creates a default SQL endpoint. We'll go and look at it a bit later as well. So let's go and just focus on creating our very first report. So here I have the data in my lakehouse. It is quite nice and self-explanatory. It doesn't need a lot of explanation. But what I could do is I could go and I could, because I have my data already available here, I could go and create my reports. So I won't be actually using the lakehouse. I could go to my SQL semantic model, default semantic model, and start creating report. So because we all know how to create report, so I'm not going to go and start creating report. I'm actually going to go and show the different use cases. So let me go back to my slides again. So, okay. I'm being very cool. I'm controlling my slides by using my iPad. So the first use case, as we said, is it's the Dataflow Gen 2. It has all those amazing features that we already have in Dataflow Gen 1, which means all those various data sources which are available in Dataflow Gen 2 as well. There are so many transformations that are available in a click way. So it is a very low code, high UI functionality. So if you are somebody who is coming from Dataflow Gen 1, Dataflow Gen 2 is piece of cake. It's not only what all the amazing functionalities we already have in Dataflow Gen 1 or Power Query, but there are some extra features available, which are like a data destinations, and there are also things like, you could have the better performance, the refresh history. Oh my God, I don't know how many people has been working with the data flows, but existing data flows, they got a bit better now. But in the beginning, when there is an error, trying to figure out what happened with your data flow, it was such a pain. But let me quickly actually show you that bit in here. So, but now, if I remove this filter, and I could go and choose the Dataflow Gen 2, and for example, let me go and see the refresh history of this. I have like a very nice detailed history, and I could go and see what activities happened, and what's happening in the query. It's a lot more nicer. There is more metadata available compared to our traditional Dataflow Gen 1. So there are definitely a lot more improvements available in the Dataflow Gen 2. And it also has like a integration with the data pipeline. So that is probably nicely brings us to our next use case, which is by using the data pipelines. So in this use case, instead of using Dataflow Gen 2, I will be working with the data pipeline. And let me go and show you that demo. So we're going to basically go back to our Fabric. And just like what we did previously, I could go and click New. But in this case, actually, instead of Power BI, let me go to Data Factory. And when I go to Data Factory, as you could immediately see, I have data pipeline and Dataflow Gen 2 available. So this is called experience. It's like, so if you're focusing more in the data engineering concepts or integration concepts, you would probably start from here. In this case, I am in the use cases, 3 use cases demo, so let me go to that workspace. And when I click New here, as you could see, the items I see are different compared to the I see in the Power BI. So that's the thing, it's like if you are working on one experience, you go and stay in that experience. So now I'm going to start creating a data pipeline. And it's taking a tiny bit of time. I blame internet for that. But in the beginning, Fabric used to take forever. And but it is like 1,000, it is definitely amazingly better, honestly. But the internet is obviously impacting a bit. So while that's loading, so data pipeline is something very similar to, if you're coming from SSIS world, or if you're coming from data factory world, data pipeline is something you already know. But a very small section, like it doesn't have the every other functionality data factory had and all those things. These are the some working bits, the best bits of those things are the only things which bought here. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. So what you have in the data pipeline, it is all in the web, obviously, and there is like any other place, it comes up with some prompts and things. The thing, I don't know how long this has been there, but I noticed it when I was rehearsing my session, and I figured out this thing is there, which is really cool, to be honest. So I work as a consultant, and I work with so many clients, and sometimes work with really big clients, like really big retail people and things like that. And they have hundreds and thousands of tables, or like a ADLS and things like that. So if those kind of clients wants to come into Microsoft Fabric, this thing is really nice, because imagine you have all your existing data in ADLS Gen 2. I could click on this, and I want to bring all the data into my lakehouse as tables. So I could go, I could point to them the source connection, and I could give them the destination connection. Boom, all the data comes into my lakehouse. My ingestion gets amazingly easy. Like, again, me being as a consultant is like we go to these clients and then we say, okay, you have ingestion, we need to prepare this ingestion layer. Yeah, it's going to take 2 weeks. But now it takes 2 clicks. So that is a good thing about these bits that really actually makes me quite exciting to go and talk to the clients. So I'm going to just cancel this one. That is not what I'm going to show you. So the things like, again, coming from the Power BI land, what I could do is, in this case, I could go and I could add a pipeline activity. So, for example, I could go and do the copy data. What is this doing is it added a copy data as one of the tasks on my data pipeline. Actually, instead of this, what I wanted to show is use copy assistant. This is probably, if you are new to data pipeline, this is probably something which makes it quite nice and easy to start, and then you could go and explore various things. So I'm just using the copy assistant, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to get my data from one of the data sources. So I go to workspace, and I want to get from one of the lakehouse. So I chose the lakehouse as my source, and I'm clicking next, and I'm going to choose one of the existing one. In this case, I am going to choose my files, and then go click next. And it's going to load the files that I have. Obviously, I don't have any tables. I'm going to choose the files in the files lakehouse. As I said, in the lakehouse, you could have structured and unstructured, semi-structured data. In this case, I'm working with semi-structured data, which is like a CSV file. It's already there in my lakehouse. So I'm going to go and choose anything. Let me see if I could find the population. I think this is the population. And it automatically kind of based on some of the sample data, by looking at the data, it defined like it's a comma delimited, and what is the row delimiter, and it kind of explains all those things. There is some advanced options as well. If you have date columns and things, you could choose like a filtered by this date. You could add those kind of incremental loading options and things. So in this case, I'm going to ignore everything, just choose these things, and I could choose again what is my destination. I'm going to use the lakehouse as my destination, and I will be choosing, let's just choose the same lakehouse. Again, I could go and choose the existing table or load as a new table. I'm going to choose new table, and this is basically the mapping. I could go and choose different mapping. In this case, I'm probably just going to click next, 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 and click save and run. So what it is doing is, it's like, this is a very simple setup. What it's doing is it's getting the source data, putting into a destination table in my lakehouse. And this is already run. But when I come to compare it to Power BI, especially Dataflow Gen 2 or Gen 1 as well, there was like, we had so many issues. Think about, like, we worked with, again, some big clients where they had so many data flows, because it was recommended approach, because data flows exist, we have to use data flows. But like one data flow fails, but rest of the data flows runs. Scheduling, I can't delay rest of the data flows just in the UI, right? Like one data flow fails, and I want to pause all my rest of the data flows because it has impact on it. And then what I had to do is I rerun the entire thing, and there could be another failure somewhere. And it takes so much time to understand what was the failure. There is no way that I could orchestrate and do those things. So that's when data pipelines is amazing, is because you could do really nice orchestration this kind of enterprise level orchestration can be done here. So like when I said, in this case, I used just copy, right? But I could go and execute data flows. And what else I could do is, for example, I'm doing this copy, and when after the copy is successfully executed, then run this data flow. If it fails, then I could go and add so I could go and add, for example, Teams. Okay, and when it fails, send a notification to Teams and okay, this thing has failed, go and have a look. Which team is looking after? They could go and have a look. So let me actually show you one of the data flow I already created. So I go back here, sorry, data pipeline. So I could go and click data pipeline. So let me show you this one. And also let me see if I could show that too. So in this one, once it loads, what it is doing is I am using the data pipeline to orchestrate my existing data flows, Gen2s. So instead of running just one, all the data flows that we used to run previously, now I could orchestrate, okay, after successful of this data flow, run the next data flow, instead of just doing it everything. Go on. Uh-huh. Yeah, yes. So the question was when you're getting data from various different data sources and you have IDs and passwords, you don't want to expose it, then you want to save it somewhere in the key vault. Can I connect to the key vault to be able to bring that password into Microsoft Fabric? And am I going to save those things in the data pipeline? Yes. So the actual integration with the key vault and the Microsoft Fabric, it was not available in the beginning. And at this moment, I don't know if it's already available or not, but it is definitely in the pipeline, and I think it is coming, or it may already came, which I haven't tested yet. In the pipeline. Again, that I don't know. I could come back to you on that, because it is definitely in the pipeline. And being an MVP, you sometimes know and you don't know as well. So I think it's already there, maybe. So I will come back to you on that. But I think I've seen it's in the roadmap for sure that it is going to come. So, but there are various other things, and also there are variables. You could add variables and parameters and things like that. So let me go to this one, and as I said, how you could do Teams messages and things. So in this case, if I go to the settings, I could even I could customize the messages, and I could also use expressions. So this is where it makes me happy. As I said, I come from MSBI background, and I've done lots of SSIS. SSIS was my first love, and then eventually I moved into Power BI world. And I do miss the control and the customization I used to have with SSIS, and those kind of bits are available here, and which was not really available in the Dataflow Gen 1. But here, you could customize the messaging and all those things. But the customization only not here, but when you're getting data from certain sources, and your table name changes every day based on the date. So you could customize your source based on the dates and things. So you could do all those kind of really nice things that was not very easy when we were working in the Power BI world. So those small things which made our life really difficult in the Power BI can be resolved by using the data pipeline. And this probably answers your question about where you were talking about having multiple tables in your destination. So this is probably where you would use that thing, same data flow coming from different data sources and going everything into the same destination as well. So data pipelines is again my go-to thing if I'm orchestrating data. The next, let me go back to the slides and play here. So so that's the demo. Come on, work. So I think pretty much everything, as I mentioned. It enables the fast copy. It is probably the quickest way to get data into from a large set of data sources and bringing into the fabric for the data ingestion. It is code. It is also like the code first activities and like a Spark notebooks and the store procedures and all those things for the data manipulation. When you're doing those things, we'll come to Spark notebooks in a bit. So those kind of things, you could orchestrate those things by using data pipeline. And it is also very good when you're doing this end-to-end orchestration, but you want to have one singular view of this entire day orchestration, then that is when data pipelines works pretty cool. Like again, I'm going back to our Power BI world. What we used to do is we had various workspaces. There is this one data flow here, there is another data flow there, and to be able to bring, for some end user to give this a holistic view of how the data is coming from one end to other end to my final report, that orchestration, explaining that orchestration to the end user was not easy. But by using the data pipeline, that definitely resolves that problem that we had as a consultants working with the very big Power BI projects. So those things will be resolved. For the next use case, what I wanted to use is notebooks. How many of you are familiar with notebooks? A few, and few are not. Honestly, a few years ago, I have a notebook session tomorrow. If you're, it's a beginner session, and probably if you want to know more about notebooks, I would recommend that. So, like, I am somebody. When I heard somebody talking about notebook, I was thinking like, how could you execute Python in a notebook? Because I was thinking physical notebook. So from there, I could actually, notebooks is my favorite thing in Fabric. So like, they are amazing. So next thing that we're going to use is notebooks. So let me go back to the Power BI. Sorry, see? Power BI is not gone from my heart. I'm still calling it Power BI. So let's go back to the our workspace. So again, I'm in the data factory mode, so I could go and click notebook. I'm going to click create a new notebook. Notebook is, if I simplify it, it's nothing but a user interface where you could go and execute code. You could write Spark, not only Spark, you could write Python, PySpark, and SQL, Spark SQL, those things. But behind it, what it does is it has the Apache Spark. So if you look at the definition of it, it's a user interface, open source user interface, where you could go and execute Apache Spark jobs. Traditionally been used by data engineers and data scientists, but I would say it is something used for any data professional. The reason why it's been very much marketed as a tool for data engineers and the data scientists is because it was very much a PaaS tool. And when you're in the SaaS world, like if you're in the PaaS world, like you have to spin up a cluster, you have to have a VM, you have to have like resource group, somebody has to give you budget, open up. It's so much complicated. And this complicated things were in control of like a data engineers had access to it. So that's why it became very data engineer tool. But in the SaaS world, where it is Microsoft Fabric, you don't have to worry about all those things. It's there, you click it, it's available. You don't need to worry about what's happening in the Spark. It's good to know if you want to, but you don't have to really. If you don't want, you don't have to. So what we have in the notebook is it's a cell based. So you have one cell here, and I could go and add multiple cells. And if you remember, what I wanted to do is I wanted to get data from various indicators. When I wanted to do that by using Dataflow Gen 2, I had to go and create multiple queries because I need to go and get data for each indicator. I could go and get all the indicators data at one point, then there is paging. Whenever there is a paging, I have to loop it and all those things, and if there is a tiny error, I have, I load my data, there is an error, then I go and change one row, then I have to get all my data again. Like we all seen that spinning wheel in the Power Query. So it's not that straightforward to just go and get data from in the Dataflow Gen 2. When I talk about data pipeline, again, what I had to do is I had to create multiple tasks. multiple copy tasks to be able to get all that data. That's when notebooks comes really nice and handy, is because what I have here, again, I already created code. So I'm going to copy and go here and paste my code here. So I'm going to just close this one for now. Actually, let me just show you. Oh, wow, okay. So I could go and choose an existing lakehouse, and I could go and execute this code. So honestly, this is 27 rows of data. Yes? The question is there any way I could get data from on-prem data sources by using Notebook? I don't think that's available right now. However, what I would probably do is, I think the only where you could get by using the data from the on-prem data is by using the Dataflow Gen 2, which is painful. I agree. I think that is going to change sooner than later. And there is this functionality called mirroring in the Microsoft Fabric. Oh my God, mirroring is just amazing. It's not available for on-prem yet, but it is in the pipeline. And it's like, if you see the mirroring demo, if you see Mark Price anywhere, go and find him, he will happily show. It is like beautiful. Just one click, all the data gets transferred into it. You have to completely forget about ingestion. But so if you have your on-prem data and you want to get data into Fabric, this is a cheap trick, but probably not so cheap. But you could use the on-prem to Fabric migration tool and get the data into Azure SQL and then enable mirroring. So, and eventually when your organization is ready to be cloud ready, then you could turn off the on-prem and just have the Azure SQL and things like that. So, going back to Notebook. So we have 26 rows of data. I am bringing all my indicators data. I am handling paging, and I am doing all those things just in 26 rows. So that is what a notebook gives me. And I have some notebook that's already available, so let me go back there and let me filter on the notebook. So let me show you this NB World Bank data. So what I have here, I literally have 15 minutes, so I'm going to rush a bit. So the notebook is another beautiful, amazing thing about notebook is you may don't have to know PySpark or Python. You could still go and write SQL. There are limitations. You can't do everything with the Spark SQL. Python is probably PySpark is the best thing to go for it. But once you have your once you are using notebooks, there are libraries. So you could go and import. There are so many open source libraries. I am all in for Steal Like Artist. So if somebody already did all the work, why not just go and take it and utilize it? So in this case, not only me going and getting the data, but I could go and profile the data. Imagine how difficult it has been to understand what's happening in your data. And again, so many times, like when you go and work in the Power BI world, like a real work jobs, what it is like our end user is probably just wanted to see patterns. They may not want an amazingly looking report. What they want is, I want to understand how this KPIs has impacting on this product. That is one thing that they want. So you create them Power BI report and then publish it to the service, refresh it, and schedule it, and give access to it, share it with the Power BI app. And at the end, once they've been shared, what they do is they take a screenshot of that visual and put it in the PowerPoint. So if that is the goal of the end user, why the bothering of actually sending it, doing all those extra steps when you actually can just create your data visualizations in the notebook itself? You could, and it's you could go and understand, sometimes I want to understand what kind of data I am dealing with. I want to create a really nice self-service BI semantic model for my end user. In this case, I want to understand my data patterns. For that, I wrote 4 lines of code. I installed this library, I wrote 4 lines of code, and it gave me all these results to be able to understand what's happening with my data. And it explaining me, each and every column, how many distinct values are there, what is the, what is the value proposition, like all those things are there. And you could go and do so many other things. So that is where notebooks are extremely amazingly rich, and I would totally suggest you to check out notebooks. And if you feel a bit not so ready, come and see me in the next session. I will be showing them how I learned notebooks as well. 10 minutes, good. So that is notebooks, and as I mentioned, there are various options available, and you could work with the unstructured data. You could just bring some images, do the data science, and work with any type of structures, structured, unstructured, semi-structured data very nicely with the notebooks. So those bits are we've seen, so far what we've seen is only data integration. The next important thing, again, when I'm talking about data modeling here, I'm talking from the Power BI point of view, not ML, AI modeling, just the Power BI modeling, thinking about relationships and the measures and things like that. So when it comes to the data modeling, again, because as we talked about, there is two types of data storage things available, right? So we have Lakehouse and the warehouse, and those are the two places where we could create modeling. I already mentioned, whenever we create a Lakehouse, it automatically creates a SQL endpoint, and it also creates a default semantic model. And on top of that, we could also create a warehouse if we want, or we could also create a semantic model by using this Lakehouse as a source. Yes, it creates a default semantic model, but however, using the default semantic model is a bit not so I would say it's in the beginning when we had Power BI, you have auto-detect relationships. It's a nice, easy step, but it was never performant. So I would say default semantic model is something similar. It's not the best option to go and do it. So I'm going to go and show you a quick demo about how we could create the relationships. So in this case, I'm going to go back to my notebook and go to Lakehouse. What I have here is I have various Lakehouses. Let me see which one is the right one. Let me go and go to this one. So I have Lakehouse here, and then I have tables. Let's hope I have tables. Nope. Let me go to a different one. I think probably this is the right one. Don't change sessions right before you're going to present. So, this is a Lakehouse. On the left, you have the Explorer. I could go and see all the data that's available in this one. I could even go and shortcut. So I don't know if you could see, and if I remember how to zoom. Yeah. So this is a shortcut. I am getting the data from a different place instead of getting it from my. Not here. This session is not about. Oh my God! Now I forgot how to unzoom. Okay, it's gone. So you could go and get the shortcut data as well. So I could go and just switch from Lakehouse to SQL endpoint. So when I go to SQL endpoint, I have these options. When I go to reporting, I could go and create model. So when I could go to reporting, and I could go and create a new semantic model, or I could also go and manage my default semantic model. I could choose if I want my my semantic model to be automatically updated or not, and I could go and create new measures. So in this case, I could go and start creating a new measure, but I won't be creating the new measure here, but let me actually show you how the other things are there. So the other things I could do in the SQL endpoint is I could go and execute some queries. I could create new views and stuff. Well, in this case, it won't be that useful, but I could go and execute, run my queries and things like that. I don't know, there is one of the schema has been disappeared. And I could go to model, and I could start creating the modeling. So in this case, it's showing me all the tables, including the metadata tables. And here, I could go and I could start creating relationships just by drag and drop. just like how we had in the Power BI. If I want to control what is involved in my default semantic model, I could click on here, and I could choose which options I want in my model and which I don't want. I could go and add a different table, and then it shows in here. So these are the default. You could start creating the reports on that, and when the end user is start using this default semantic model, they don't see all the delta tables, they see only the ones you have there. On top of it, you could go and create just a normal semantic model as well. The one thing I quickly wanted to show is you also have data warehouse options. So again, let me just filter out and show you warehouse. So this is the warehouse. And the warehouse also have the exactly similar functionality, like the query and the model. You could go and click create a new measure. There is no calculated column, there is only measure option. So the difference between the let me quickly show you this slide. So the difference between using the SQL endpoint and using the data warehouse. So this bit is the SQL endpoint, and this bit is the warehouse. Is like when you're using the warehouse, it is read-write. So you could write data into your warehouse. But when you're using the SQL endpoint on the lakehouse, it's read-only. You cannot write. But do remember, when you're using the warehouse and you're creating the views, it doesn't support direct lake. So if the performance is important for you, then you do have to think about it. So the SQL endpoint and the data modeling data set is pretty similar, and the warehouse is probably, warehouse is quite nice, especially if you're coming from SQL world and you have already so many databases lying around here and there. Because warehouse, it's not only you could get data from one warehouse, you could get it from cross places as well. So you could either just create a shortcut, there is that way, but you could also now I forgot my SQL language a bit, but like a full function, you could add a database name, schema name, table name, and the things. So you could have that full, I forgot the name of it. So what was that? Yeah, three-path naming. See, it's been a while since I worked with SQL. So you could have that one, and then you could get the data from cross database querying as well. And it is quite nice, but it depends upon where you want to go. If you want to go lake-centric, or if you want to go to the structured kind of way. The one, I know we are not creating stunning data visualization, as I said, in abstract, but you can create those stunning data visualizations once the data is available in the lakehouse. So if you want, this is kind of architecture I'm kind of using at the moment, is I know people, it's more because on the access control way. So what I am trying to do is I'm trying to do all my data ingestion and the data transformation or a modeling in one workspace. And then for my data presentation or data consumption, I am putting the data in in another workspace. And in this case, I created another lakehouse, but I won't be copying the data into a different lakehouse. I would be using the shortcut. So that way, what I'm going to have is my end users doesn't have all, especially if I'm using the self-service BI, right? And I feel like that is going to be the most important thing with the whole fabric, is because more and more people are very comfortable using Python languages and things like that. With Copilot elements, AI elements, probably report generations is going to get much easier. So self-service BI is going to get very important. So in that case, I don't want my end users, when they get access to my workspace, as a contributor or access, or viewer access. Well, probably not as a viewer access, but various access levels. Based on that, I would probably create a separate workspace for my consumption. So that it is, but again, that is based upon current situation. I know there are, who knows what are they going to announce in the next week at Fabric conference, and these things probably going to change as well. So That is kind of covers about most of the things of the session. All the slides are available there, and so does the notebooks I've seen. If you want to start exploring Fabric, go and check out, there are notebooks, Python codes, and that stuff is also there. So it is open data. You could download it, start play with it. If you don't want, if your organization is not opening Fabric, open a trial account, and there is the data. You could start exploring it. Notebooks is the most amazing thing, so I would encourage you to check that out. And if you like the session, or even if you don't like it, give the feedback. Feedback is really, really important. It makes our life, it makes us a better presenter and all those things. And this is something I love saying it, especially, I've been coming to the SQL Bits for 10 years. I've been saying it to the helpers. And 10 years ago, I used to not see that many women in the team. And I love having my front row with full of women, so it makes me really happy. So thank you so much for joining. I will be around here, so if you have any questions, come and talk to me. If there is anything which is not unclear, if you want to see more of it, come and see me. I will be more than happy to tell you. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.